What's an orgasmic feeling that isn't an orgasm? After working outside on a hot-ass day all day, having nice, cold drink is damn near heaven for a few seconds. When you hold the scissors still and they cut straight through the wrapping paper. Peeing after holding it in for a while, then getting those goosebumps. Closing those 10 tabs, Word, PowerPoint after finishing a project/assignment. Being comfy in bed and feel yourself drifting off to sleep after a long day. Taking my boots off after working in them all day. I'm on chemotherapy, and I recently went 50 days without keeping down solid food. The first time I digested unbuttered mashed potatoes with chicken broth, it felt like a non-stop 3-hour orgasm the entire way through. I can honestly say this is the first time in my life I've ever seen someone recount a positive story about chemo. I'll give you another one. My chemo was pretty bad, ABVD, but fortunately I had no trouble holding down my food. I did however get completely bone tired from getting up and going to the restroom, I mean exhausted. Have you ever hiked? You know that feeling when you've really exerted yourself for a long time, right at your limit, and you find a place just to lie down for a bit? It was that same feeling once I laid back down in bed, but literally 10x as good. It was actually as good as an orgasm, it was amazing. And all my body hair fell out, so I also had that smooth, freshly shaved leg experience that chicks always talk about at the same time. That's also just as good as I'm led to believe. And since I was so tired, I felt that every single time I sat or laid down. It really did bring cancer from a 0/10 to a solid 3/10. It was that good, LOL. When that piece of popcorn finally comes out from between your teeth or gums. Scratching your ankles right after taking off your socks. Also, rubbing your eyes after removing your hard contact lenses. Cracking your back when you really need it. Better than sex sometimes. I was a long-time waiter, 15 years. I distinctly recall getting through a real shit show of a dinner rush, spent 3 to 4 hours constantly moving and dealing with all manner or lunacy, in the weeds the entire time. After the rush I was standing with my back to the bar next to the assistant manager, just taking a moment. I turned my head to crack my neck and a fucking zipper explosion of pops went from the base of my skull to the top of my ass. 20 to 25 machine gun pops and cracks. The relief was so intense and unexpected I literally took a knee to recover for a moment. The ASM just said, "That sounded amazing," and walked off. Best crack of my life. The moment when you've been congested all day and one nostril finally opens. That and when your ear finally unblocks and you can hear again. Man, I've had like 7 ear infections in 2021. The times when I woke up and I realized I could hear properly again were amazing. It's also incredible how many little things I noticed I couldn't hear, like using my mouse and keyboard became silent for me despite being someone who was notorious at work for sounding like I was attacking my keyboard whilst typing. I'm convinced I've gone slightly deaf in my left ear because that was the one that primarily fucked up. Finally taking a huge dump after holding it in. When Etta James sang "At Last," that's what she was talking about. Peeing when you've been holding it for a long time and you've really had to go. When I passed my first kidney stone I had a partial blockage, which meant that for about 6 weeks I constantly felt like I had to pee, 24/7, the kind of having to pee like after a long night of drinking, but every time I tried to pee only a few drops would come out and the urge to pee never went away. When I passed the stone and heard the plink as it hit the porcelain, followed by my first real piss in over a month, I don't think any orgasm will ever come close to how good that felt. Edit, shout out to my homies at r/kidney stones. A wonderful and supportive community if you are suffering from these spiky bastards. Walking into an air-conditioned room after being outside for several hours during summer. I grew up in South Florida and my parents never wanted to/didn't have the money to spend on air conditioning. So, needless to say, our house was very humid and hot. On a very rare occasion though, my mom would decide that it was hot enough to turn it on just for the night. There is something so magical about being hot and sweaty from playing outside all day and going home and seeing the windows and doors closed, because it meant only one thing. Opening the front door and feeling that crisp cool air was the absolute best. Despite now living a climate-controlled life, I can still feel it and smell it. Your whole body would just instantly relax walking in. You know when you go swimming, or even just tilt your head the wrong way in the shower, and you get water stuck in your ear? You shake your head back and forth trying to get it out. You even jump up and down with your head leaning over sideways. But the water just won't budge. You eventually go to bed and lay on your side, hoping gravity will pull the water loose. You lay there, waiting and hoping. Finally, it happens. That water in your ear breaks loose with a single, crisp swoosh sound. You can finally hear clearly again, and you can go to sleep with no more pressure in your ear. That's a good feeling right there. When you take a bite of some really delicious food. We called it a lasagna moment in my house growing up. Mom always made lasagna from scratch for my dad's birthday, and his first bite of lasagna always made him practically tear up because it was so good. When you take a first bite and you die and go to heaven for a split second, it's a lasagna moment. Picking your nose and scoring a booger that seems to be attached so deep in your head that it tickles that back of your brain. Better than an orgasm. The first time you feel safe picking your nose after a nosebleed, and pull out a bit of booger connected to that congealed gooey tendril that goes up your nostril. I'm pretty sure this is the most disgusting comment I've written, but it's such a relieving feeling. When you shave, exfoliate, and moisturize your legs, put on pajama shorts, and get into bed with freshly washed and dried sheets and blankets. I get a chill up my spine into my head/scalp, then radiating into my arms and hands, listening to music sometimes. Holy shit, do I love it. Goosebumps and all that jazz. Taking off your bra or boots at the end of a long day. Curling up in bed, putting your feet up. A hot mug of cider on a cold day. When you finish work, every last chore, house is clean, you're fresh out of a hot shower, shaved, teeth brushed, no work tomorrow, and you slip into your bed with clean smooth sheets. And your cat moseys over to boop your nose with hers. The relief of pain, that final push to deliver the baby, or when my dislocated leg went back into the hip socket, OMG. Sun sneeze, aka photic sneeze. For you that don't know, it's a real thing. The photic sneeze reflex is an inherited and congenital autosomal dominant reflex condition that causes sneezing in response to numerous stimuli, such as looking at bright lights or periocular, surrounding the eyeball, injection. Eureka moments, where you finally gain new perspective on a perplexing subject or connect to one seemingly disparate subjects. Developing a teenage crush and feeling that sensation for the very first time. When I was in the 8th grade, I developed a crush on this girl named Amy the last week of school. She was always pretty, smart, sporty, and cool, but it wasn't until our final week of junior high school that I developed major feelings for her. We didn't have much to do the last week of school, so our teacher let us go outside one day to have a free period and just chill out and sign each other's yearbooks and stuff like that. My friend and I were going around getting ours signed, and our last stop was with Amy and her friend, who were sitting on this little hill on the side of one of our school's soccer fields. We sat and talked to the girls, and it was just a great day to be alive. It was this perfect overcast day where it wasn't hot and there was just enough of a breeze and sunshine poking through the clouds, and it actually felt like a perfect day in spring even though it was June. While we all talked, Amy made this daisy chain for me and put it around my wrist and smiled at me. Well, that was one of the best moments of my life because I was in love at that very moment. It was a moment that I never wanted to end, and that school year was the best one of my life up until that point. I spent the summer hanging with my friends at the township pool and spent those days and nights thinking about Amy and whether or not I would see her before high school started. That summer was the best summer of my life, and I had a blast living out the type of days that we all know from movies like The Sandlot and Stand By Me. All the while, I was thinking about Amy. The way that she made me feel all through that summer was the same way that I felt that day when she made me the daisy chain on that hill. It was the last week of August before high school started, and my friends and I were all at the annual township open pool night where people who weren't pool members could come to swim and enjoy a cookout if they were invited by a friend. I was hoping that one of Amy's friends would invite her to come, since she always swam at her best friend's pool at her house and didn't have a pool membership. With about an hour or so left before the pool closed that night, Amy showed up with a friend of hers, and they met up with her other friends and my friends who were hanging out by the tennis courts and mini golf course. I was panicked and excited all at once, and both emotions made my heart start beating rapidly in a way that I hadn't felt before that night. It took me a half hour to somehow get her attention, and when I did, she smiled at me and we started talking about our summer vacations and how they went for us both, in addition to talking about what classes we were taking in high school and who our teachers were. It was so great talking to her and just having her happy and smiling in front of me that I didn't realize how much time had passed while we all stood around and talked among our friends. It was dusk when we said goodbye for the night and for that summer, and it was a beautiful night for me with my friends. The sky was orange and blue, the lightning bugs were out and shining, and the weather was perfect with the summer wind blowing around. If I could have stayed in that moment forever, then I would have at the time. That night was the end of the best year of my life, and it was capped off in a way that made me hopeful and excited for the future as a high school kid in love. Years later, Amy turned out to be a bitch. That hill that we both sat on was demolished and made way for a new school building, and the township pool endured financial difficulties and dwindling membership after one of the managers was caught stealing money from the place. Despite all that, I still hold on to those memories from that year and from middle school as some of the happiest of my childhood. Whenever I see daisies growing in the grass anywhere, I remember those times and the daisy chain that Amy made that made me fall in love with her when I was a kid. The daisy chain still hangs on a corner of my desk in my old room. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in more Reddit content. See you in next video.